Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Beekman Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please note the exits, one behind us here, the one door you came in, and one at the back of the hallway. All right, so at this time, I'd like to invite everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Okay. So welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. This evening, we have a continuation of the public hearing for the Stanky Pole Barn, an area variance, 15 Walker Road, grid number 6759-00100442, zoned R90. The applicant is requesting relief of 4,802 square feet as the required square footage exceeds 25% of the principal structure, which would be 478 square feet. The applicant is requesting an area variance for a structure that's 60 foot by 88 foot. The applicant is requesting relief of approximately 20 feet due to elevations as the required height exceeds the height of the principal structure, but under the 35-foot maximum. The applicant is thereby requesting a height variance. So, just want to note, thank the applicant for submitting a couple of things that we discussed at the last meeting. We have pictures of measurements of the height of the principal structure. And so I see we've indicated that the structure is, sorry, I thought I had that there, 24 feet. Sorry, so total height 24 feet, flat roof to vaulted rooftop of 4 feet, so 20 feet to the flat roof top.
From the garage.
Yes. Okay. And then also the applicant submitted pictures of a barn, 1,462.5 square foot barn at your primary residence. Thank you for those. All right, so last meeting we adjourned to review 4 examples of larger structures that the applicant submitted to the board, and we wanted to just take some time to review those examples and try to understand how they informed our decision in this case. I reviewed these properties very carefully to try to understand how they applied to this circumstance. I do note that 3 of the 4 are in an agricultural district, and that those structures are agricultural buildings in that district, and the one that isn't, which is 227 Dorn Road, is itself a horse barn built in 1991, which is also an agricultural building, even though the property is not in an agricultural district. Just wanted to invite the other board members to share any thoughts they had on these examples, because I think that was a key point.
Sure.
Where we,
Yeah, and thank you for bringing those to our attention, but as Christian mentioned, there were different circumstances for these buildings, and the biggest one was 1991 or 93, which was actually prior to when the master plan was done, okay? So that alone, I think, makes a difference. What I would like to say is that, and I'm not going to speak for my colleagues, but I think that we always do try to accommodate an applicant. I've said it before, the very name of the board, Zoning Board of Appeals, we know everyone coming to us, there is an issue to begin with. And we really have to balance that with a lot of other things. Regulations being one, the master plan, the community response, and precedent. And I think that we have come out, I know with Linda I have come out, specifically to see and understand completely what it is that you wanted to do and why. And that's a wonderful idea. I can go back to my own garage and say, oh goodness, do I wish it could be twice as much, to have all the things that we would like to have stored properly. And it's not always the case. Same thing with sheds. People have to work around what they would like and what their needs are, and what can be done. I must tell you, Mr. Stanky, I actually asked a math teacher, because I was going around with the numbers and the percentages. And I asked a math teacher to just write them out for me, so that I could truly understand it. What you're asking for is a structure that is over, not 2.5 times, I want to be correct, but certainly double, more than double, in fact, what the house is, which is what we have to go by, And I asked them to please do 5,000, 4,000 square feet, 3,000. And the truth of the matter is that even if we double the structure of the house footage, it would be less than 4,000 square feet, and that would again be over the square footage of the house. And I must tell you, that is a huge concern for me. The idea sounds wonderful. I think one of our responsibility is to always look into the future. And this square footage, I have a difficult time with. It's mostly, it sounds wonderful. Yes, it could look great. The community does not seem to mind it. But then again, Ms. Cici could be moving to Florida, and there might be a new homeowner, and there is just too many unknown. I'm not comfortable with this kind of square footage.
do you want to say anything about the examples or that the applicant provided, or? Any other board commentary on either the examples or anything else you see in the application?
I agree with your assessment on the examples. 3 out of the 4, unfortunately, they're not comps. I understand why they were provided, and they're helpful to see for sure, but they can't be considered comparable, and for the reasons we've discussed with the horse barn, I think it's just not apples to apples. So I'll just concur with you.
I agree also.
All right, so I just wanted to give the applicant another opportunity to make any additional presentations that you wanted to make this evening. So if you'd like to approach.
Just in reiterating the examples that everyone doesn't like, it wasn't to say that I was trying to compare them to what I want. It was the fact that what I'm proposing isn't against anything that's already in the town. It's a building that are seen in this town, and they are larger than the primary residences. I understand ag district, and the one on Dorn Road is residential ag district. I get all that. But the fact is that the house is X, and the horse barn, or whatever you want to call it, building structure is 13,000 square feet, which is much larger than the house. And it was before the law was passed. Townsend Road was built in 2007, the law was passed in 2001. So obviously, if anyone set a precedent, it was him for that property. But in other words, I wasn't trying to say that it was a comparable to my exact position. But they are examples of homes that have larger accessory buildings, and I don't have to memorize, but I believe at least 3 of them, the property is smaller than my property. And the one on Townsend Road is the size building that I adjusted my application for it to, 4,800, it's the same size. And in that property is actually in more of a development area than I would say my house is, whereas I'm surrounded by woods, he's surrounded by other houses, one on top of another, on almost like a cul-de-sac type of situation. That's all.
Ian MacDonald, I'm an attorney with Mackey, Catania, and Whalen, representing Ed. And I would just point out that the purpose of providing those other, what you refer to as comparable properties, is not to show that they're comparable necessarily, but this board has a job to do and a standard to apply, and that is you weigh the benefit to the applicant in granting the variance against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The first factor to consider in applying that balancing test is whether or not an undesirable change will be produced to the character of the neighborhood. The point is that there are other properties in the town of Beekman, in this zoning district, the R90 zoning district, that are significantly larger than the primary structure residence on the property, and that this, to allow Ed to build the barn that he wants is not going to have any adverse impact on the neighborhood.
Could I just clarify one thing?
Yeah.
Are you referring to other properties other than the 4?
No, well, the only ones that I looked at are the ones that he pointed
Okay.
out. So, the 4.
I didn't list all of them.
No, I mean, there are many structures that are quite large. There are many commercial buildings we talked about, so we're trying to get as close as we can to something that compares to what we're...
My only point would be that's not necessarily your job. You are to apply this balancing test. And my point would be that when you apply that, the benefit to Ed in granting the variance outweighs the detriment to health, safety, and welfare of the community, because one of the reasons is that allowing this size barn is not going to have really any impact on the neighborhood. Frankly, no one is going to see it other than people that are on his property. And that should be a concern.
That's at this time, correct?
I'm sorry?
That's at this time, when he built that barn.
Correct.
So if he were to turn around and sell it in 2 years from now, and the land gets subdivided, do you see what I mean? So,
Well,
I mean, these things can happen, that's why we have to look to the
Yeah.
future.
understood, but obviously as a board, you have to look at the application.
But we
and
also
the
have to think
conditions
of
and the-
those things too.
Well, that's fair enough, but again, it's, how does that fit into the standard that you have to apply? And I would say that this is a 17-acre parcel. It's heavily wooded. Because of it's heavily wooded in the terrain, nobody's going to see it. You really can't see it from any other properties or any of the public roads. Could he subdivide it? Yeah, I mean, he could do that now without needing the zoning board to approve. He doesn't want to do that. This is, he can clarify, but from the way he's described it to me, this is his retirement house. He lives in the village of Pauling on what I would say, I used to work in Pauling, it's a beautiful street, but the lots are much smaller. And my impression of Ed is he is a do-it-yourself type of person. He wants bigger property. When, there's an issue with the house, he does it himself. And so he has equipment to do that. He likes to tinker and putter. His wife does stained glass crafts, things like that. What they're looking to do is store all of their hobby, personal recreation equipment indoors as opposed to keeping it outside of the house, which arguably would be more unsightly. He's proposing, he wants it to look nice. Again, he's probably the only one that's going to see it. He wants it to look good. He is willing to agree to reasonable conditions for vegetation, to further conceal it or shield it from the neighbor. But when you apply the balancing test, again, arguably it weighs in favor of granting the variance. One other thing to point out that he showed to me, the Town of Beekman zoning administrator appears to have sent a letter to you, not to the board, but is recommending. Okay, it's addressed to the board, but the address, it's regarding 15 Walker Road. But the zoning administrator, Jessica Peterson, has recommended that the variance be granted. I don't know if do you have a copy of that letter?
We do have a copy.
Okay. So I mean, your own zoning administrator is recommending it for the reasons essentially that I mentioned, that nobody else is going to be able to see this, and frankly, that it would be more attractive to keep the equipment, a boat, tractor, things like that, inside an enclosure rather than keep them out in the open on the property, which he would have the right to do.
Councilor, did you want to say anything about how these examples that you shared with us, either agricultural districts or clearly an agricultural building, a horse barn, how those inform the way we should consider this? So the reason why I'm asking, because I've struggled with this myself quite a bit, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we could help the applicant achieve what he was trying to accomplish. And one of the questions I had asked was about the size of the structure and other things. There's been a lot of discussion by the board to try to figure out how we can help the applicant. And one of the things that I come back to is that when I look for structures, and I've looked myself for structures in the community that are of this similar size, I'm basically finding either commercial buildings or agricultural buildings. And I was hoping you could help us, provide some context to how the examples that you shared would be helpful to us.
Because allowing this structure would not change the character of the neighborhood. So when you're viewing other properties in the town of Beekman and you see a large structure, larger than the principal structure on the property, what difference does it make whether it's for agricultural purposes or commercial or just personal use?
No, I just want to make sure I understand. So if the building was intended to be a manufacturing facility, as long as it looked like a barn, your presentation is that that would be a compelling reason to grant it. So if the applicant was, I'm not suggesting that they are, but I am concerned about the future. So if someone were to buy this property in the future and look at this very large structure and say, this would be a great place to do manufacturing or to do something else that a very large structure would lend itself to in a commercial type of a use where, it may be hard to find commercial property that would achieve their objectives. That's why I'm asking.
So it's a different issue. That's a use issue, which that your town code should address. I don't believe that a manufacturing use would be legal, permissible in the R90 zoning district.
Right.
So,
Right, but if I may, Mr. Chairman, and I just, to give you an opportunity to speak to this, because obviously it's an issue that matters a lot to the board, I want to try to frame this a little differently. The thing that, in my view, potentially makes it different, like you say, what difference would it make if there's a horse inside or a tractor inside, right? I think the difference is that in terms of neighborhood character, potentially, that is an expected accessory use in an agricultural district. I think it's fair to say that generally speaking, as an accessory building to a residential home, we don't expect just these, massive outsized garages. I do think that's different in terms of character. I'm not saying you can't speak to it, but I think you should speak to it. And then I just do want to say one other thing. I do think you should also address the other factors, because you are quite correct, and I'll confirm for the board, that balancing test is what you should apply here.
Right.
But even if the character of the neighborhood argument were felt like it weighed in favor, there are, as you of course know, other factors. And by that standard, the fact that let's say it didn't change the neighborhood character one bit, but by that factor, if this couldn't be seen, that would mean you could put a 60,000 square foot accessory structure. As long as it couldn't be seen, it would be okay. So I think the difficulty is, and I'm only saying this to give you a chance to address it. I'm not trying to push it one direction or another. But those other factors also matter. And in some respects, I think they weigh, obviously the size weighs very heavily on the fact.
I may have inartfully articulated, but that's what I was getting at with my question.
So it was a lot, and I can restate it if you want to go one at a time.
Okay.
But I just want to give you a chance to talk.
So with respect to character of the neighborhood, I understand what you're saying, but honestly, with this, again, you have to look at this property, 17 acres, heavily wooded. What's the difference between whether he's got horses in this structure or a boat?
Well, because he doesn't.
An RV. Right, but in terms of the character of the neighborhood, does it really make any difference? I would say it doesn't. It's not going to look any different. Nobody knows what's inside other than Ed and his wife. Again, on another property, the answers to these questions would be different, but this is 17 acres, heavily wooded, fairly secluded, and nobody's going to know that this building exists other than Ed and his wife. His neighbor Sissy is here. Obviously, she knows about it, but again, he is willing to do whatever is necessary to provide screening or additional screening to the extent anybody or the board thinks that it is visible to the road or to neighbors. He's already proposed planting additional vegetation, but he has no objection. He'll do what you want to do with respect to that. I can't remember you.
Other factors should be discussed.
Oh, yeah, no.
The other factors you have to weigh as well. I think it's fair to say it's a substantial variance. I believe you mentioned the height variance is 20 feet. I believe it's only 10 because the existing house is 14 feet.
It's 14 from the lawn, but it's 24 feet from the driveway when you drive up.
Not the barn, but the house.
The existing house.
Okay,
I gave multiple measurements because it was unclear where you actually take the measurement from. So I gave it to you from when you drive up to the door, which you can access the building through the garage door. That's 24 foot to its highest point.
okay. In this structure, the proposed barn is 24 feet.
Originally it was 26, I said I could make it 24,
24.
yes.
So I mean,
My understanding is that it's the height from the front of the structure.
Okay.
The elevation from the front of the structure, because I think it might be fair to call the garage part of the basement, but
sure.
So
But
that would be 14.
then it's 14, so it's the difference between 14 and 24, not, so it would be 10 feet. You can, I think it's fair to say that's still substantial, but not as great as you had indicated. There's no question the size is substantial. I know, in the statute and the case law, there's not really any guidance on how do you determine what's substantial and isn't. It's very determinative based on the facts, but I don't think anybody would say that this is not substantial. Again, if it was a different property, if this was on 55 and you could see it, or right on Walker Road, and you could see it, if the neighbors could see it, we'd be having a different discussion, but it's secluded. It is, I think it's fair to say that this is not going to have an adverse impact on the character of the neighborhood. When you look at the others, obviously it's a substantial variance request. Can it be achieved, excuse me, by some other means?
Mhm.
He's tried to place this in a different location on the property. That doesn't seem to work. The location that he's proposing,
Makes it more obvious.
yeah, makes it more secluded. I would say this, the way the code is written, and I understand the purpose of it. I explained to Ed, I was involved in, not identical situation, but similar situation. I was representing the town of Clinton, and you had an accessory contractor use that was, twice the size of the primary house on the property. And town of Clinton code did not specify. So I can understand why town of Beekman would want to include this type of restriction, but it does create a quirky situation for somebody like him.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a 1,900 square foot home, so that means he could, whatever it is, 480.
87 or something.
Yeah,
like that,
so,
It's small.
so that would, I'm not good at judging square footage and what you can fit in it, but I would think that would make it difficult to even put a car in if it was a detached garage, which you would have the right to do.
But I think you're talking about alternatives for where this building could go.
Be on the,
right?
on the property.
But I mean, there are other alternatives
Yeah.
to needing the variance at all.
Well,
Right?
I would,
I mean-
he could tear down his house and build a 20,000 square foot home, and that would,
Well, or he could build a smaller accessory
could-
use,
he
or he could
could.
store it somewhere else.
certainly any of those are possibilities. To
Again,
the extent that he can afford
Right.
to do that.
Yeah.
The idea is, and I think he's explained, that he and his wife have their own business,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm probably not gonna say this correctly, he explained it to me one other time. He creates machine parts or parts.
But I'm a contract manufacturer, so
Yeah.
I make machinery parts, I make sets.
Because I think the board has talked about
So
the
he's,
size of the building that's
Yeah.
being proposed.
his
right?
idea is he's going to retire,
Yeah.
and
Have everything.
he's going to go from 100 miles an hour down to zero, essentially. He's got a business that it's constant. He works whatever, 12, 14-hour days, 7 days a week, he's looking to cut back and wants a property that is more secluded, that allows him to store his toys, the things that he likes to use, and have that all on one location. I've seen the meetings, he explained to you that right now he keeps some of it on his property in Pauling, there is a barn there, but then he's got to rent space to keep, I don't know, everything else. And some of it he keeps in his work space in Connecticut.
Yeah.
So when he retires, that's not going to be possible. He's going to have to cut back. In addition, well, he's going to have more time, but presumably less money because he won't have that income. And so that's why he wants to do it. And I think it's fair to say he has no objection to placing the structure in a different location on the property, but at least he determined that this is the best location in terms of, screening, keeping it not visible from any neighbors or roads. He did originally propose to put it in a location that was a lower elevation, but that would be in the front yard of the property.
Another variance,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Counselor, just so I'm sure that we didn't miss an opportunity here, a smaller structure wouldn't be workable. I just want to,
Yeah, my understanding is, and Ed can speak to this, he has agreed to reduce it a little bit to 4,800 square feet, is that?
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
At the moment, right.
The problem that he has is that he wants to store all of his stuff indoors as opposed to outdoors.
For the reason I gave the drawing of, some of the larger items that I wanted to store, and I gave you the size of basically each item, if you add this up, you can clearly see how much square footage that uses. If you just take the 1,400 square foot barn that I now have, and the areas where I want to put the tractor and implements and the workshop area, you're already up to 3,800 square feet. So 48 isn't that far away at this point. And it doesn't allow me to put inside what I want to keep inside from having to leave it outside.
got it.
Anything that's stored outside is always mouse infested, animals get to it, raccoons, whatever you want to call it, the weather, the elements, trees fall on it, it's more work than it's worth.
Got it. Thank you. Did we want to address any other of the?
Just the other factors to consider, I think you've already discussed. Will the variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood? To me, that's essentially the same as the first one, and the answer to that, I think, is no, overwhelmingly no, because again, it's, given the circumstances in this case, it is not, because of the size of the lot, because of the topography of the lot, and the vegetation, that nobody's going to see it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
There'd been some board discussion at prior meetings regarding storage of things like fuel in this structure, how the structure might or might not be heated. I also thought about, what noises could emanate from the structure and things of that nature. Did you want to share anything with the board?
Again, I would argue that that's not for this board to consider. Obviously, your job here is to determine whether or not to grant him a variance from your zoning code, from the size of the structure and the height of the structure.
But those questions, I think, are meant to go to the question of the factor about environmental impacts.
Exactly.
But
Well,
I thought we had addressed it originally,
Yeah.
which is, there isn't anything different in this building that isn't already in my and all of my neighbors' houses.
Yeah.
And given the size of the structure, the reason why I asked was just I wanted to give you an opportunity to address the magnitude of what might be there. So
Sure.
in a structure that's 500 square feet, a couple of gas cans would be a reasonable thing. In a 5,000 square foot structure, you could have tanks of fuel and things of that nature. Again, just to understand if you wanted to share anything with the board regarding.
He's not proposing that. My point was just that he has to comply with the other aspects of the law, the building code, fire code, those things he will, and those would be, the issue of fire, how he heats it, things like that, are going to be addressed there. He'll have to comply with those. I understand what you're saying, that the magnitude or the size of the building could impact that. He's not proposing to store fuel tanks, but my understanding, he's got a boat. There's some type of.
Well, there's fuel on the boat.
Yeah, so.
That doesn't travel separately.
Yeah, a tractor, there's going to be, unless it's electric, it's
There will
going
be
to run
no
on fuel.
additional fuel or those types of storages that aren't already on the property, right? I have diesel cans for my tractor, I have gas cans for the lawnmowers and the weed whackers and all the other, equipment that I have. So none of that increases. It just gets moved into one building as opposed to being in the basement of the house.
So yeah, I would argue that is better for the environment because it's going to be on an impervious surface, whereas he can legally store these outside, and you have a leak or something like that, it goes into the ground.
Did you want to ask something?
Yeah, I was concerned because he's got 7 or so machineries that all will contain gasoline. And then I said, well, how are you heating this? And he told me a wood-burning stove. Well, all you need is one spark. And I mean, yeah, you can have a weed whacker over here and a tractor over there, but they're not all in one contained area with a wood-burning stove that can spark. And go to any piece of machinery and God forbid there's gasoline odor or what, that fire truck can't make it up that road. There's no way.
Well, that's another issue, but, he's not looking to thwart any other provisions of the law. He's got to comply with building, fire code. The building inspector, before issuing a building permit for the structure, is going to, look at the plans and make sure that that's the
And it was only a
case.
suggestion about the wood-burning stove. I haven't made that decision yet.
Okay, well, I had asked you how you were going to heat it.
Because to me, that would just be a moot point if you declined it.
Well, because you had all the wood.
It doesn't matter at that point, that's the only reason. But, whatever's available to me will be considered. But again, even if it's wood burning or oil fired or gas fired or electric, it still has to be installed to code.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with code. I had to obey it and follow it when I had the electric service. I put it in myself.
I suggested you make a well, just to,
That was my original idea. You're kind of.
no, like off the gutter or something, something to,
Like 1,000 gallon
help a
tank
little.
and collect the rainwater off the roof because it is the size of the roof.
yeah.
The concern about access to any emergency vehicle, not just fire truck, is a legitimate concern. But having this structure isn't going to change that. That's still a concern with the home. Actually, more of a concern because they're going to be sleeping there.
Yeah, that's
Nobody's gonna be
it's a
sleeping
concern
in
for
the barn.
everybody's safety.
Yeah, but, you
Okay.
have fire code for that. And to me, access is always an issue with any extended driveway.
Yeah.
For fire trucks in particular, because they can't turn around. I'm sure, Ed, the way that he is, if widening it would make that safer, he would probably do it. It's for his own safety.
There is a provision where I originally wanted to access the property.
Yeah.
But that would put that driveway in more of a visual point to the neighbors. But I could certainly use it as a turnaround. You go up one way and come down the other. There you have the circle. I mean, personally, I would prefer that because it makes it easier towing and being able to park.
But as far as, water source, I'm not aware that the fire department would ever use, unless there was a dry well or a pond or something on the property. But I'm assuming that because of, he doesn't have the only 17 acre or
Yeah.
plus property, that it's an issue that I would assume there's a tanker truck, because there's no fire hydrants up there. And I assume that that's true for a lot of properties in the town.
Around, yeah.
In most towns in Dutchess County, that's the case. And no question, it's a concern and a problem, but, it's addressed by the fire district.
Okay.
Counselor, I just want to take us back for a second. So in the diagram that the applicant shared with the board, he has various areas here laid out for different type of woodworking and other types of,
Inside the structure?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to address any noises that you think would be emanating from this structure and how that might impact the community.
So I don't think I brought a copy of that, but I've seen it. Obviously I know he has a boat, RV, I think there's tractor.
Yeah, tractor.
Yeah.
implement.
There are some vehicles, but what I'm hoping
So-
that you can address is all of the woodworking.
Saw, the drill press, the chop station, all of that I already have in the house. I use it in the house right now as we're going. I don't know if you remember, but the kitchen windows were out when you came, not just the broken window, but the kitchen windows. I just replaced the kitchen windows. I rebuilt new frames, and I installed them. I did it all in the house. So the saws, the screw guns, the nail guns, that noise is being made now. And I'm not aware of any complaints.
Right, and again, the reason why I'm asking, just so I'm clear,
No manufacturing
is
going on. what I'm
the
trying to get.
magnitude of the structure
Yeah.
does suggest to me that bigger things can be manufactured, more things can be manufactured. So that's why I wanted to just, maybe no manufacturing will happen at all. And maybe there won't be a table saw and all these benches and all of this, drill press and so on and so forth. Because this is just a proposed diagram, right? We don't know what will be in the structure. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to address.
Yeah, I would say for manufacturing, that would not be allowed under your codes. That would be illegal if he did that.
I mean, if it was a hobby,
Yeah.
it might be
Right,
hard to
it's-
know
these
where
are
the
things
line
that are
is, right?
Hobbies that he can do legally now on the property. What he's proposing to do is.
Just on a big scale.
Well, I think what he's proposing is he's taking all of his hobbies, putting everything into one enclosure.
Right. And that's why I wanted to
Yeah.
see if you wanted to address the noises that may come.
Well, as far as noise goes, it's going to be better to have those activities going on indoors rather than outdoors, which again, he could do legally. I mean, he could address better the amount of noise that each activity would, the boat, I assume, is just on a trailer. It's not gonna, he's not gonna start the vehicles. Obviously, they make noise when they start up, but it's not any more
Right, that's
than
not
anything
what I'm
else.
referring to.
The crafts, activities that his wife is gonna be engaging in, I don't,
There's no,
okay.
there's no machinery involved in that, so I mean.
But you did talk about, and again, we're just giving you a chance to put on the record,
Sure.
whatever, so we're trying to be thorough. You did talk about, I think there's some fabrication or construction might be the wrong word, but you're gonna, right? I mean, is there any?
I didn't think there was gonna be any,
That going on, or?
you're not doing any,
No, I'm a fabricator,
Right.
and I feel I'm being chastised for what I do for a living.
No, I
It's
just.
the way it all sounds here. I'm manufacturing commercial factories. I mean, that's not what's happening.
And it won't happen in there?
No,
Still
anything that
5,000
I
square
build,
feet.
anything that I
Yeah.
fix, anything that I do is for me. Right? You know, I built all my own storm windows. I did it all right there in the house. Nobody seems to know that I did that. Now I just want to do it in a workshop instead of, you know, on the floor in the living room. I mean, that's, you know, everything that I'm proposing is things that normal people would do in their garage. I happen to be abnormal because I have an overabundance of stuff that I've collected. I'm a mechanical person. So, you know, some people, you know, my neighbor Mike across the street, you know, he's into antique tractors. You know, I could get into antique tractors. I love trains. I love airplanes. I love rockets. But am I going to build a Saturn V missile in my building because it's big enough? I mean, no, of course not. If that's what you're worried about, I mean, I don't know how it can make you happy to say that that's not what I'm going to do, but...
I hope you don't really feel chastised for what you do, because I think what you're describing here, most people would find admirable, not anything to chastise, the fact that you can do all these things and you have all this equipment. I will say, I think what you're hearing is when we talk about the environmental impact, when we talk about noise, when we talk about all these things, the undercurrent is the substantiality and the possibility for it, because nobody's going to be policing what you do in your home. But by building a structure that is literally 10 times, okay, we will not be policing what you do in your home. But by building a structure that is 10 times the size, the variance, it just opens up all of these possibilities, which could create issues that a smaller structure may not. And I think that is...
I'm sorry, I have to say something about the size of the building. I don't really understand why that is such an issue, why you're worried because it's so big that this could possibly happen. If it gets subdivided by some other body that buys the property. I mean, how is it that I'm supposed to be able to control the future?
Well, you can't.
Well,
And that is,
but what you're saying is that you're considering not allowing it to have it because it's so big, and, you know, when somebody else comes in, they're gonna be able to have free reign. Well, they're gonna have
Because
to
it's
come in.
there and available to them.
Yeah, but they're
And
gonna have to
nobody's
come in front of
policing
you to
them.
say,
Do you
hey, I
see?
wanna make this a commercial property. Hey, I wanna subdivide it. Hey, I wanna do this. It's out of my control either way. So why should I not be allowed to have it because of what somebody in the future may or may not do? And it's getting back to the size issue, I don't know if anybody's watching the news, but they just discovered another Chinese biolab in Las Vegas in somebody's house. Okay? Are you worried that I'm going to create a biolab in this building? Because it's certainly big enough. You know, a couple of my customers are nuclear engineering companies. I've built service outage equipment. Does that mean I'm going to build a nuclear reactor? Because I have a building large enough to do it.
The size is obviously significant.
Right, and I'm not denying that, I
Yeah.
get it, and I understand that I'm asking for something that isn't normal.
Well, and the size is, at the core, the reason why we're here, right?
Right.
Because if the applicant wanted to build, sir, if you wanted to build a structure that was 400 square feet, then you wouldn't need a variance, right? So at the core, the size is what brings us
Correct.
here.
But the mere size of the structure doesn't have an adverse impact on the environment. There's nothing about it. It's just, I mean, it has more of an impact on aesthetics, how it looks, than any impact on the environment.
So,
And if you're uncomfortable with the way it looks, I had said in the very beginning, I can make it look different if you don't like the colors. You know, the colors I picked were to try to blend in with the environment. If you feel I didn't succeed there, that's fine. You can give me, we'd rather see wood on the side of this building instead of, you know, painted, you know, corrugated metal.
Obviously,
That's fair. I mean, I understand all of that. And I'm not trying to pull one over on anybody or you know, get something that's unreasonable. I'm not making any demands. I'm just saying the size is the reason I'm here, and the reason is I need this size, you know, but like I said, if you add up what I already use right now, and I'm not including my manufacturing area, you know, in Danbury. I mean, I'm certainly not going to bring 23,000 square foot of stuff into a 5,000 or 4,800 square foot building. That's not the intent. The intent is my personal belongings, my personal projects, and future projects. And that's what's going to be in there. And some of them are large. I mentioned the Wright Brothers airplane I want to build. You know what I mean? Is that a problem? Is the town, if the town found out that I was doing that in my own garage, is that against the law? I don't think so. again, I'm not normal to, everyone's standards, when it comes to possessions and, whatever. But it is what it is.
Okay. One of the things, just to continue for one moment on the environmental, that I was trying to get a sense and an understanding of is that, I know sometimes when you have larger buildings and depending on the activities in those buildings, there may be trucks or, that kind of a traffic in and out of that type of facility or structure. And, that's one of the things that I thought about when I thought about the neighborhood and the neighbors, was that if there were trucks in and out of there, for whatever reason, moving, all of these belongings in and out of this building on a regular basis, and trucks were engine braking and so on and so forth, backing and making sounds, and this was a continuous activity, that it would certainly impact the neighborhood. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to address.
Again, that goes to the use, and when he's not proposing that.
Well,
at
I think
all,
it,
But,
right, I mean,
And it's
I'm
just
basing it on,
The truck already goes up and down the driveway every day.
yeah,
On
so,
the driveway with the same diesel truck that I would be moving the majority of my things. Large construction trucks will be necessary in order to do the construction. And once they're gone, they're gone. There's no jake braking, I don't own anything that big. The only large things driving up there will be an RV and my truck, which happens to be a super cab dually, right? So it's bigger than a regular pickup truck. But I mean, there's no, and it's not because I have a big building, okay? I've got this truck before I thought about building this building. You know what I mean? You preface everything with buildings of this size. That's your key beginning to everything, and it doesn't really apply. The size of the building doesn't dictate how many trucks are going in and out of my property. And it would only be my trucks, and maybe my friend if he comes to visit.
so he's not proposing to do anything that he can't legally do
Doesn't already.
Absolutely.
outside of this
no
proposed
question,
structure.
no question.
So, and the concern in the future as to what the building's gonna be used for, you have a zoning code that, and you have a zoning enforcement officer or zoning administrator whose job it is to enforce that. If there's something being done, some activity that is not consistent with the town code, then, whoever owns the property would be subject to enforcement of that code.
Great.
He's proposing to do things that he can legally do now on the property outside, putting them inside on an impervious structure. Again, it's got to be built to fire code, building code. He's not looking to avoid any other laws or your provisions of your town code. My understanding, none of the neighbors are objecting to this. Nobody in the community has objected to this. Your own code enforcement officer has recommended that the variance be granted. When you apply the balancing test, considering all those things, the size of the lot, the seclusion of it, the topography, it weighs in favor of granting the variance.
Any questions from any of the board members?
I don't have questions, I have comments, so.
Yeah,
We're going to have more
yeah,
discussion.
I want to share some.
Yeah.
Okay. Counselor, did you want to share anything else?
That's all that I have. Do you want to add anything? No, just, thank you. Thank you
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thank you. So I just want to,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to just make sure that if there's any public comment, we give the public the opportunity to do that, and then I think we can, so just like to make a motion to open up public comment. Can I get a second?
A second.
Roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So I'd like to invite anyone from the public to share any thoughts that they'd like to share with us at this time.
May I just say, a word on Sissy Wrigley on 21, parcel downwind of Ed Stanton.
Adjacent.
Yeah, adjacent. Stepping up here to just say, thank you for allowing me to be informed, because an educated consumer is our best customer. And I do live on 21 Walker. I've been there 24 years. And I've seen changes right down at the bottom of my driveway when I go out there. So it's not the same as when we first moved, and I understand that, there's different people moving in and moving out, and that's part of progress. I understand that. When I fast forward, project, down 10, 20 years from now, like we were maybe mentioned, like how would the neighborhood welcome such a structure? And I don't know how long I'm going to be where I am either, so I'm thinking forward in a motion like down the future. Would that impinge or impede my property value? Say, that's my nest egg. That's what I live on. I live off it, I live in it, I'm happy to live at a homestead. Ours is considered a homestead. And we've seen changes, but what would it look like 20 years from now, like when I'm not longer here? I don't know how, but for the people that'll be in my home, and how would that either impede them or reduce the assessment on my property too? Because that was a question I had. How's the assessed value of the homestead going to be apprised for property value down the road if they put this in? And it's very visual. I know it would be. And how would that affect my property assessment for the future people, not just me? I'm okay with it, but down the road when someone else comes in and takes over and lives where I live. So that would be my question. The assessed value of my property, would it be impeded or reduced it? And I had that question when we first began in November. I asked someone, there was a different person, I forget, sitting in your chair, and I asked her what the assessed value would be for my property, saying that structure goes up. And also there is a lot of springs, and there is a stream that runs north of the lots, and it goes across the culvert pipe into my neighbors, Robin and Barb, and I'm concerned about the quality of the rainwater and drainage on that stream bed, because it does run right across the property into our neighbors. I was just curious about that. How would that be the quality of the water on that street? And on my street, I would say the access to the driveway, how it would be more traffic, and it would pick up dust in the summer because it's dry in the summer, but if it, it's going to get a little more of a traveled road than it was. That's my concern too, because you can hear it. And the question, the last one I have, is the variance. How much do I get from that driveway, on my property to that driveway? Like, what's the variance? That was my question in November. I didn't get an answer back from anyone.
I'm not sure what is that question?
The variance from my property to his easement to his property. What's the variance? Where my property line is to his easement?
What's the distance, you mean, like the
Yes,
setback?
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know.
I didn't get an answer, and I'd asked that.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt. Do you have more? Okay. the assessment question is a factual question that is an expertise, and I don't know if the applicant wants to speak to those questions, have an opportunity, but it's an expertise, as you know, that's not,
It should,
you know.
the assessor.
Should.
Oh, you need a mic?
But it could.
I mean, as far as the assessment goes, the assessor has to base the assessment on what's on your property, not on what's on the neighbor's property, my understanding. So it wouldn't, what happens on Ed's property should not legally affect your assessed value. Other than, to the extent that what anybody in the neighborhood is doing on their property increases or decreases market value. Assessed value is supposed to be tied to market value. I don't know if you're at 100% equalization in the town of Beekman or not, but the short answer to your question is that it should not. If it did, if your assessor increased your assessment based on what happened on your neighbor's property, that would be something that you would be able to challenge. But other than general market conditions in the town or the neighborhood.
He's correct.
As far as the setback from the building, I believe it's over 150 feet from the property line.
I think she's referring to the driveway.
Yes.
Driveway.
What is the variance from my property to your easement driveway going in your back?
So I think
It's the same as it is on my regular driveway. It's just,
Same
you go up my driveway now.
I'm asking the panel, do you have a variance?
So
from my
variance
property?
is a term of art, and it means the difference between what's allowed and what is being proposed. So I'm not sure, I want to just understand your question. It sounds like you're asking, are you asking how close this new driveway can get to the property line?
Yes, I am, thank you.
Okay, I see.
Is there an answer? I asked at the last November meeting.
Well, he doesn't have to widen it on your side, he can widen it on his side of the property.
Understood, but how close can he come to my property line?
That's what she wants to
variance?
do.
I believe it's within 3 feet.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's not
I
much.
believe
It's
it's-
not
In any
much.
event, he, just like with everything else that he's proposing, he couldn't, he would have to work within the legal bounds of his property and the easement. He couldn't
I'm not
interfere
putting
with it,
anything
yeah.
that I'm not allowed to have,
Yeah.
other than the size of the building.
Like nothing we
You
would,
saw the driveway, you were there. You're right, the ascension of my driveway where the wooden wall is, that wooden wall is right on the property line. Okay, so that driveway that's been there since 1955 is still there, and it has been there all these years. So
And there's-
we're talking
That was a
6 or
smile.
7 feet from the property line, the existing driveway. And what I did was I used what they had was an old easement going up to, the original property had telephone poles going up to supply electric, but they're privately owned. When I bought the property, I put an underground service in. So those lines are no longer being used, those poles are no longer needed. But what I did was I cleared the overbrush and the trees and whatnot that were on that access and put gravel down it so that vehicles, because I was assuming construction, would be able to get up and down.
Yeah.
Right, because you can't just drive on it.
right. I think,
But that still follows the same.
Sure.
Property line and maintains the same distance. It doesn't cross the property line, it may get a little closer right where the one turn is, but it's within 5 to 10 feet.
there isn't anything, I hope to answer your question, there isn't anything that this board would or could do that would impede any property right of yours, whether it's an easement or an ownership right. And as council here, I'm sure will confirm, we don't even have the right to, the board doesn't even have the right to impact private easement rights or anything. So he would have to abide by all those rules, no matter what.
About the telephone pole, my telephone line's underground too, from the telephone pole that's to our home. And there's vines, right, of course, everything takes off. But what I'm trying to say is, they were concerned about taking them off the line, right? Because your wife was upset that there was so much falling behind on the.
Yeah, the electric company comes and they cut down branches and they destroy trees, like cutting all the limbs off, and they're just leaving the stalk of the trunk 20 feet in the air. But they do absolutely nothing about all the, whatever it is, ivy or this invasive grapevine that's actually pulling the wires off the telephone pole.
Right, they are.
She
have to talk to
She said she's called,
electrical
I
company.
called.
Okay.
I don't know what that has to do with this, but it's still an existing
Right.
condition that's there, and my wife doesn't like it. You know.
You have to speak to
Because it seems like our power goes out like religiously every time it snows.
It's just
because of
discussion.
Trees and vines that are falling, they're all being strangled by these vines.
Understood. Well, I just want to keep us on track here. So thank you for that, those insights, and thank you for your input.
And he'll probably, if I can interrupt for a minute, he'll probably not appreciate, nor would any lawyer, of what I'm going to say, is that I believe what Sissy is worried about is her resale value, because I put up this giant building.
Right, not an increase, but
Well,
potential.
she's worried about her taxes
Yeah.
going up, but I think what's the marketability?
Yeah.
And I'm going to
She's
address
right.
that, saying that if you can't see it, then how does it affect marketability? You know, and again, it's not an eyesore. It's not meant to be something, it's going to be well-maintained. It's not going to be downtrodden. It's not going to look like some of the barns that are in the town of Beekman right now that look like, you know, they're being held up by toothpicks. You know, it's to be maintained and to be aesthetically pleasing. I don't want to affect my property values either. Not that I'm planning on selling, but if that has to be an option at some point in time, I certainly don't want to lose, right? So I certainly don't want to do anything that's going to affect her property value. So because I think that's really what her concern is her property going down in value if she decided to sell it because of this building and this structure.
Well, that's a question for the assessor.
Right.
That you
Right,
talk.
but again, it's that, I guess I wanted to reiterate that because I didn't feel she was getting it out right, so I just wanted to say that. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to close the public comment.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So I just wanted to give the board members an opportunity to say any final, make any final comments. I just want to run through a couple of things as I thought through this myself quickly. I do want to stay grounded in the town code myself and in the 5 elements that we're considering. You know, and I have to take the town code as we find it now, whether I agree with the town code or not. I can certainly express my concerns and, you know, I can try to make the case to the town board to change the town code, but that's not what I'm doing here this evening. I do, as I thought about this, taking the points and considering them, this is by far the most substantial variance that I've ever heard as a board member on this board, being 10 or so times what the town code allows. It is as substantial a variance as I could have ever imagined, which is very significant factor in my thought process. I think if we were to grant a variance this significant, it would be very challenging in the future to not grant another variance that was significantly substantial, just based on substantiality. I think that does kind of set a precedent that we have to really consider very thoughtfully. I also was struck by, you know, we often have applicants that come to us with different challenges, and I myself have experienced buying a home with a structure on it and then finding out that it wasn't legal and having to deal with those issues. And to the extent that an applicant is coming to us with a situation that's self-created, I think this is certainly as self-created as an application for a variance could be. And, I was trying to figure out how we get to where we can help the applicant, but I understand the applicant needs a structure this size and no smaller, and they want it, the applicant wants it where they want to place it. So the self-created nature of this was, really struck me. I also was thinking about alternatives to building this kind of a structure, and I thought of many alternatives that I could think of, and I do understand that the applicant really wants this structure that they're proposing and that they're not interested in alternatives. But I think that's part of the challenge that I had, was that trying to understand what could be alternatives and, if those would achieve the same objective. In this case, we were advised that there weren't any alternatives that could be considered.
If I may.
Sir,
You suggested two buildings, 2,500 square feet each. I didn't understand how that made any sense, other than to make it more expensive for me to construct and for me to operate and to use up more property. That was, I don't believe I ever said I wasn't open to any suggestions. Or, you said that I should think about making it smaller, so I did.
thank you, sir.
If I'm happy with that. I'm willing to hear another suggestion, but, I don't believe that I'm getting that. I'm just.
Thank you, sir. So I also did think quite a bit about the character to the neighborhood. And again, I spent a lot of time looking for structures that were similarly sized as an accessory structure. And I really could only find two types of structures in the town of Beekman, either commercial structures or agricultural structures. And so I struggled to understand how this type of a structure would fit into the neighborhood, given the character, which is either farming type applications or commercial properties in a different zone. And that also didn't help me. And finally, I was looking at the environmental and community impacts. I am worried about how a structure of this size would affect the community in terms of noises and other considerations. I don't know that I'm satisfied with what I heard that would help me to understand what we would be doing by allowing such a large structure and how it might be used in the future and affect the community. So, does anyone else want to make any comment?
Yes, I do have a couple of thoughts. To follow up on Christian's, I think something was said that, you would not know what could happen in the future, which is absolutely true. That's why we're here. We do have that responsibility. So that's why we have to think about any applicant request, not just for the applicant, but also for the town in the future. Sir, I believe you mentioned that because it's in an area that it's really not visible from the road or whatever, which is absolutely true. But then again, if this were to pass, we could have somebody on Beekman Road or any other road, they could have enough land to want to build something really, really big or as big as this, and they can say to us, well, we'll put trees around it. Again, it's something that we need to think about long-term. Something else that was mentioned, and I think you should know at least what my thoughts are, that the code officer wrote a letter, which she did, and that was unusual. But that said, even if we took the letter, that's just one item that we could possibly look at. Then there is the neighbors. There is all the questions that we have. It's not, otherwise, we could just have one person say, okay, we like this, let's go through it. Or one neighbor say, oh, that's fine with me. There are more facets, and we have to take them all in consideration. Basically, and another thing that I did do, and I know it's been called a barn, but I looked up, again, trying to understand the size of it and all of that. I looked up average size of a small warehouse, and it came up 5,000 to 15,000. So it is a massive, even a 4,800 square feet, it is a massive, massive building. And once it goes through, there is no turning back. So these are all of my concerns. And again, I do understand your point. Believe me, I've been there. At a much smaller scale, but in terms of wanting a building, we would say the shed, the famous sheds that would be built next to our houses. And those even have to be really placed in a certain footage and whatnot. So I do understand it. I do, believe me. I go into my house every day and I look at my garage and say, oh, if only. I share that sentiment with you. I don't know that I can get over the size. I'm sorry. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said anything.
You're good?
What would happen if
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So,
That's up to him.
carport type?
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah.
so hearing no other comments from the board, I wanted to make a motion to vote.
Actually, I do have
Oh,
one.
sorry.
If he put in like a three-wall, like quote, carport for all his toys and an actual shed, not a shed, but a building
Accessory
for
building.
his workshop,
Okay. Oh, I see
would
what you
that be
mean.
different?
It'd be a different application.
But that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Because then it's not an enclosed,
No, and-
four-wall
and
enclosed.
That's why I
spot.
spent a lot of time asking questions about alternatives,
And
because I
then-
wanted
and
to
then the
explore.
workshop.
Right.
Because then you're
Yes.
actually, and in a way, it would help for heat, because then he's not heating a 4,800 square
Ask
foot
him.
area. He's only heating an area for a workshop, and where he
No,
has all
clearly
his
there are many
toys,
alternatives, right?
he could
to-
put in a three-wall
Right.
carport that doesn't need to be heated, that is
Right.
two separate buildings. They're still together, but they're apart.
Okay. That's
Right.
an option.
So, I
That is-
mean,
I
I
see-
think
I
there
see
are
what
many
you meant.
options, but we have
Yeah,
to,
but, alternatives are really for,
The
and
applicant.
it's a good discussion to have,
Yeah.
and you've had that discussion at several meetings. I hope that the applicant gets the idea of what your primary concerns are. It's really for the applicant to formulate, otherwise you guys would be remaking every application that came in, and that's. you can't
But a
do that.
carport, a three-thing carport can be taken down,
No, I understand.
whereas the other
I'm
item
just letting,
can't.
yeah, I mean, it's certainly
it's up to
something,
him.
but it would be a different application. and
Yeah.
That would be good news, because you can't if you were to call the question on this application, you can't just like resubmit it, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's something for the applicant to think about. I do want to suggest, by the way,
Yes.
and I confess because I'm new to your board, so I'm not sure
Yes.
what your past practice has been. But if you're prepared to call the question, whichever way the vote goes, I would suggest that you authorize me to draft a written resolution that memorializes what, these findings and whatever your vote turns out to be.
Yes, certainly.
So just,
Okay.
and then you'll sign it afterwards.
Yes. Okay, so, I'd like to make a motion on granting a variance of 4,802 square feet for this structure. Can I,
Do you need, did you want to read into the record those points?
Well, no, I
there?
think you've already put them on the record.
Oh, okay. Oh, then
So,
I'm
and I will, we'll take each vote, because you've got two variances to consider, right? So you're asking for a motion to grant the first variance, which is the size variance,
Right.
correct?
The height?
no, this
No,
is, the
size.
first one is the square
The size.
footage.
48.
Okay, so, can I get a second for that motion?
Second?
Okay, and roll call vote?
Nay?
God, I'm very undecisive, but I think I'm going to have to vote nay.
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 Okay, I'd like to make a motion to consider the 10-foot variance for the height of the structure. I mean, would we vote on that if we denied the variance for the, it's kind of academic.
I guess I would do it, yeah. I would
Yeah.
do it, Yeah. And you said consider, but I would say either to grant or
Grant,
deny, whatever.
yes.
whatever you- yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to grant a variance for 10-foot variance for the height of the proposed structure. Can I get a second?
Did we determine that that's the correct, that's the correct,
It should be 10 feet.
it's 10 feet on the height?
That's my understanding.
I think that's right. No, I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay, roll call vote?
I would be good with it if,
Now, here it says, I would be okay.
yeah.
Can I just?
Yeah, of course.
So, counsel, how would it, I mean, what would be the impact if we're not granting the variance for the structure size, but yes for the height? Should we consider our vote on the first variance for the second, or?
I mean, I think, I guess what you're laying the groundwork for the applicant to potentially, like, let's say that motion were to pass. You'd be telling him that he could go up 10 feet higher with some structure,
One less thing.
but not a structure of this size. That allows him to consider potential alternatives. So you could do one and not the other.
Well, I guess my challenge, the reason why I asked the question is because it would be a hypothetical structure that we don't have before us, right?
So we don't know.
I'd want to know what that structure was.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, you probably have to vote consistently.
All right, so can we abstain? So leave it not,
Well, I mean, we're denying
Well,
the,
yeah.
You could say up to 10 feet and
No, I
say
don't think
yes.
you can do
No,
that.
you
I
can't?
think you're right, yeah.
Okay.
It's this building that you're voting on, yeah.
so I think just voting yes on one and no on the other is kind of,
Doesn't make
doesn't make
sense.
sense.
All right, then we can vote no on both, so that it's a clean slate if the applicant comes back.
Yeah, you can only vote on the building that's before you.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so roll call vote?
Nay.
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 Okay, so that concludes this evening's hearing. I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.